Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. So in this video we are going to be reviewing the brand new DC comic book movie that just got released yesterday, Shazam. And it's really interesting actually because in this movie they take a lesser known character, you know, the standard more well-known DC comic book characters are Superman, Batman, which have had, you know, questionable, mixed reviews lately from the DC comic book universe. And in this film, they've taken a lesser-known character and completely changed up the formula. So the standard formula for DC these days is taking a very dark and gritty route. Whereas this time, they've completely flipped that on its head and it's a lot more light-hearted, it's a lot more comedic, and actually, the result is really, really impressive. And this means a lot coming from somebody who's very much Team Marvel. So let's talk about the movie Shazam. So straight from the offset, this movie is excellent because it really explains the backstory of the villain. You know, most other comic book movies just have a villain that's being bad for the sake of being bad. Whereas this time you really understand, you know, the backstory of the villain, why they're doing what they're doing, why they think what they think, and, you know, what their general purpose is. So that, you know, really makes Shazam a good movie because you really understand, you know, the side of good versus evil. Talking about the side of good, the storyline and the premise of the film is a little bit far-fetched, but kind of go with me here. There's basically a wizard that wants to pass his powers on to somebody who is pure of heart, and he, you know, is scouring the world looking for this person and eventually finds someone who he deems to be, you know, pure of heart, and passes on his powers to him. And this boy, basically, when he says the words Shazam, he turns into an adult superhero who has powers that are very similar to Superman. And the other kind of storyline with this young boy is that he is looking for his mum, who he lost when he was a young child, and he finds himself in a foster family. So, you know, from that kind of perspective, it's very similar to kind of Instant Family, which got released recently, and, you know, you can check out my review for that in the description box below. So, you know, already the storyline is really, really good for Shazam. Another thing that I wanted to say about the storyline is that the pacing is done really, really well. It's not like it's spending a long time setting it all up. For example, you know, with Fantastic, where the entire movie felt like it was just setting up the next movie. This movie is very well contained and it's very quick actually. I would say, you know, they do take time to kind of set up very different aspects, but they're done really, really quickly, and it doesn't make you bored. It just does straight to the next scene, to the next scene, to the next scene, and it's just paced really, really well, and I feel like that's a real bonus for it. And another perspective is that, you know, it knows what it is. It knows that, you know, there's this teenager that suddenly turns into an adult and has superpowers, and they really play with it really, really well. The acting is fantastic, and obviously I'll talk about the actors and the characters in the next section. But the portrayal is just done so brilliantly that you really do believe that this teenager just suddenly turned into this adult with superpowers, and the situations that they go into is what would probably happen if a teenager just suddenly got powers, and kind of what they would do, and kind of what they would do with the kind of technology and selfies and YouTube and all of this kind of stuff that's out at the moment. I feel like it's really current and it really resonates really well because of that. And the other thing that I really like is that the film doesn't lecture the viewer. You know, with Spider-Man and Peter Parker, not that there's anything wrong with this, but, you know, the classic tagline of "with great power comes great responsibility," and the journey that he goes on with Uncle Ben and having to use his powers in the right way. And, you know, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, and it really works for Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And just what they do with Billy and Shazam is just very clever because it's just very light-hearted, it's very comedic, and it just, you know, puts the characters in intense situations for sure, but they just do it in a really fun, light-hearted, comedic, easygoing tone, easygoing kind of, you know, approach with these situations that the characters are in. And I really appreciated it because of that, because it's just such a chilled, funny, comedic movie, and I feel like, you know, it's definitely got the superhero aspect there, but they just handled it in a way that A, hasn't really been done before, and B, is just really, really fun. So I feel like overall the storyline is really, really good for Shazam. The characters and the actors in this movie are great. It's definitely a comedy superhero movie, and it's just acted so brilliantly, and it's just so funny, and it's just enjoyable from start to finish. Zachery Levy does such a good job in terms of playing adult Billy and the main character of Shazam. He just really captures the fact that, you know, there's a teenager Billy that just suddenly gets superpowers and is this adult superhero, and he just plays it so brilliantly because in his portrayal, you can just tell that there's a teenager in this adult character's superhero's body, and it just acted really, really well. Zachery Levi just does such a good job in terms of some of the fight scenes and some of the scenes with different characters and the different foster kids. So overall, just Zachery Levi just does such a good job. Mark Strong is a really, really, really good villain. You really understand his backstory, like I was saying before, and you know, you can really understand why he's doing what he's doing. He also has some really funny moments in this film as well. His fight sequences with the character of Shazam is really, really good. When Mark Strong's character becomes this villain, he does some evil stuff, and the next time you see him, he's just chasing and battling Shazam. And it just would have been nice to kind of have seen more of his character kind of doing evil stuff. I know why they didn't do that, because they wanted to give more screen time to Billy and Shazam and kind of the hero's world, and kind of setting up that, you know, space and exploring this teenager who suddenly got these new superpowers. But it just would have been nice to have seen a bit more from Mark Strong's villain's character and just kind of doing a bit more. But you know, I totally understand why they did what they did. And from a storytelling point of view, the movie does flow really, really well. So I know why they did what they did, and I agree with what they did. It just would have been nice to have seen a bit more from Mark Strong's villain's character. Asher Angel and Jack Grazer do a really, really good job as well. They're the two teenage leads in the film, and they kind of carry it really, really well. They bring the heart and soul into the movie, and you can see how much fun they're having with the fact that, you know, one of them has now suddenly become a superhero and what they can do with that, and the dynamics that has in terms of one's a superhero and one isn't, and they kind of play with that really, really well. So when it comes to the visuals department, it's really hit and miss with this film. Some of the visuals are really, really good. You know, when he saves Shazam and it's suddenly the adult version of his character, that's really, really cool. And you know, some of the fight sequences are really, really nice. But otherwise, some of the CGI, I must say, is very, very dated. The demons that symbolize the 7 deadly sins look absolutely dreadful. Some of the acting is just, you know, really cringy, because, you know, there's these demons and you can tell that it's in front of a green screen, because some of the acting they don't really know where the demons are, and then, you know, when they're fighting, they don't really kind of look that great. So, you know, it's just such a shame, because, you know, the storyline of this movie was great and some of the visuals are good, but some of it was just so bad and it was just real painful to watch, especially on this massive cinema screen. So yeah, it's a real shame that, you know, some of the visuals are great, but some of them are really, really bad. So in terms of comparisons to other superhero movies, Shazam is a great entry. I'm really, really, really glad that DC have totally switched up their formula and have tried something new, because they can do, you know, the comedic, light-hearted superhero movies really, really well. You know, the movies that they used to do years and years and years and years ago were so much better when they were kind of a bit more light-hearted and chilled. Yes, you know, the Dark Knight Batman trilogy was really, really good when they kind of went down the darker route, but, you know, DC shouldn't be afraid to try comedic, light-hearted routes, because Shazam is a great example of the fact that they can do it right when they do give it a go. I would say, you know, in terms of other comparisons with other movies that are kind of on a similar tone, I would say Ant-Man is quite similar in the sense of it's quite comedic, it's quite light-hearted, it's story-driven but done in a fun kind of way. So, you know, Shazam is very similar to that. And I would even go as far as saying that Shazam is probably the best movie to come out of the DC cinematic universe in quite a long time. So, you know, it's definitely one of my favourites from a DC perspective. So overall, I would say that Shazam is a great movie. It's very self-contained, it's not trying to be part of any massive cinematic universe. It's just focused on its characters and kind of the world within the Shazam space, and it does that really, really well. Like I said before, I'm really, really happy that DC decided to change their formula up and try something a bit different, because it worked really, really well. And already I can't wait for the sequel of this movie. It's a shame that the visuals kind of weren't up to scratch in some aspects, and because of that, overall I'm going to give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I'd love to hear what you think, so please let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.